In fiber crafts, the most important choice will always be the fiber, and in today's video I'm specifically talking about fibers that you should choose for warmer weather. Welcome to Sorceress Craft channel. I'm Spigen. I've been a knitter for 29 years and I've dabbled in all sorts of fiber crafts, and also I'm consistently overheated, so I've paid a lot of attention on what fibers I should wear. Before you ask, if there's any relevant details about what I'm wearing, all of those details will be in the description. In today's video, I will talk about plant fibers, I will also talk about silk fibers, and I will briefly touch on other animal fibers like merino, and I will briefly touch on things that you should definitely avoid. I will talk about blended fibers, I will talk about the qualities that you should be looking in yarn or fabric, and of course, timestamps are in the description so you can easily jump around and get the information that you specifically need. The most popular and accessible plant fiber is definitely cotton. Cotton is a fully natural plant fiber. It's breathable, it won't overheat you, it can absorb a lot of moisture, but it also dries a bit slowly. So that is the reason why your cotton garments dry so slowly after they've been blocked. And also for this reason, some people prefer not to use cotton for hiking or heavy physical activities. As a fiber, cotton is on the heavier side. So if you compare a sweater that you have knit in wool and another sweater that you have knit in cotton, if everything else is completely the same, the gauge, the yarn weight, the size, literally everything, the wool sweater will always be lighter than the cotton sweater because cotton is simply heavier on its own. For some people, that can definitely be a drawback for cotton. However, for me and plenty of other people like me, that is actually quite a bonus. For me, it really feels pleasant to have some weight to the garments that I'm wearing. Cotton has no memory, and that means it's not really able to spring back to its original form. In fabric, that means that cotton is prone to wrinkling, and in yarn crafts, that means your garments that you've made with cotton yarn will be more prone to stretching out. However, I've knit a lot with cotton, and it definitely does not stretch as much as people tend to imply in social media. All of those horror stories, they aren't really that true. I've knit a lot of fitted garments, I've knit a lot of shawls with cotton, and they hold up nicely. Cotton is prone to stretching vertically because of its own weight, but it's not like it will become a shapeless blob or that it will keep stretching endlessly. Also, the tighter your gauge, the less your garment will stretch. Cotton is an amazing fiber for people with sensitive skin. It's not scratchy at all, and usually it will feel quite soft on the skin. For that reason, it's also very popular in babies' clothes, but also even more so because you usually can pretty safely toss cotton garments in the washing machine and not worry about ruining them. Of course, when it comes to knit or crochet garments, you should do it on the gentle cycle, and you should never overwash your clothes because that ruins your clothes. But generally speaking, cotton tends to be machine washable. In fabrics, cotton comes in various forms. It can be woven, so completely non-stretchy, or it can be knit jersey, so it will be stretchy. It can have two-way stretch, it can have four-way stretch. It's truly a versatile fiber. And it's pretty easy to sew with it because usually it's not very flimsy, it's not too prone to fraying, and it's pretty easy to work with. In yarn form, cotton comes in two different variations. You can have either brushed cotton, normally it will be softer and it will have matte finish, or you can have mercerized cotton that will be shinier, but it will usually also feel stiffer. For that reason, usually for garment making, we choose brushed cotton, and then we use mercerized cotton for things like amigurumis or decorations or accessories. However, that is not a hard rule by any means. That is a personal choice, and it highly depends on how the yarn actually feels and behaves. While I usually knit or crochet my garments with brushed cotton, I have recently encountered some amazing mercerized yarns that feel almost as soft as brushed yarns. So there is definitely some development happening in the yarn industry too. Cotton yarn can be quite splitty, especially brushed cotton, and sometimes you will encounter cotton yarns that almost aren't spun together, that are just cotton threads, and then it's on you to decide how much of a problem it is for you personally. And also, cotton is a bit stiffer than wool, so some people will find it a bit harder to knit or crochet with cotton. However, again, that is a highly personal preference, and I personally Absolutely love working with cotton. If I had to choose just one fiber that I could work with the rest of my life, I would no doubt choose cotton. That's my first choice, always, forever. I love it. It's not overheating me. It's not itchy. It's versatile. And depending on the fabric thickness or yarn weight, it can be either warmer or not as warm. Next plant fiber we're talking about is linen or flax. Especially with yarns, those terms tend to be used interchangeably. Linen is also 100% natural plant fiber. It's made from flax. It's highly breathable. It will usually keep you quite cool. It can absorb insane amounts of moisture, but it also dries really quickly. And the best bit is it's not prone to absorbing any smells, so it keeps fresh for a longer time. So if you plan to sweat a lot, linen is definitely your best choice. Historically, linen has been used widely. It's one of the fibers that humanity has worn a lot, and for a good reason too. Depending on how flax is processed, the resulting fabric or yarn can vary a lot in softness. Especially with fabrics, you will sometimes encounter linen fabrics that almost feel scratchy, but they aren't itchy the way wool is itchy. They are just scratchy because fiber tends to be stiffer if it's not processed as much, if it's not washed as much, if it's not bleached. However, the amazing thing about linen is that it gets softer with every wash. And linen is also a fiber that you can pretty safely just toss in the washing machine and not worry about ruining it. Sadly, in yarn form, linen is a bit less available, probably mostly because it can be quite stiff as a yarn and people find it hard to crochet or knit with it, so there isn't as big a demand for it, which makes me personally quite sad because I really like the knit and crochet garments that are made with linen, and I don't mind the stiffness as much. But luckily, linen can be encountered in lots of yarns as a mix with different fibers, so there is still some hope for us. Same as cotton, linen also doesn't have any memory and is just extremely prone to wrinkling. Basically, in fabric form, if you look at it, it has already wrinkled. But that is just part of the linen look, and honestly, we should stop being so obsessed with keeping our clothes like pristine, straight, non-wrinkly, and all of that other crap. Clothes are meant to be worn, and that means getting them wrinkly. It's fine. Last plant fiber we're touching today is bamboo or viscose or tencel. They are actually kind of the same thing that goes under different names. Kinda almost. There are differences and there are nuances, however those nuances are way beyond the scope of this video. The important thing to know about viscose or bamboo yarns, they are categorized as semi-synthetic fibers because while they come from a completely natural fiber, so a bamboo, which is a fast-growing and renewable resource, to get it to a fiber state, it needs to undergo a massive chemical treatment. And depending on how eco-conscious the companies that are making those yarns or fabrics are, well, the impact on our planet can vary quite a lot. Some sources are claiming that maybe tencel is a bit more eco-friendly. However, it also seems that those sources are connected with the companies that are making those fibers, so there isn't really any way for us to verify how true those claims are and what is really the extent there. There are also fibers like sugarcane or eucalyptus, and generally speaking, all of those sorts of fibers will kind of go in the same category as viscose and kind of behave the same way. From all the plant fibers, bamboo will always be the softest and smoothest. It will feel silky and luxurious on your skin. It's usually quite lightweight. You can usually machine wash it. But one thing that you really need to be careful with bamboo, as fiber, it's really flammable. Even though bamboo fibers also don't have any memory, in my experience, they are not as prone to wrinkling as cotton and definitely nowhere near as prone to wrinkling as linen. In fabric form, bamboo and viscose can be really fiddly to work with. It's prone to fraying, and because it tends to be slippery, it's sometimes hard to sew with it. But again, that vastly depends on the fabric itself and how it has been treated. In yarn form, I always find bamboo delightful to knit with. It can be a bit splitty, but I'll be honest, I really don't care about it, and the softness of it just feels amazing. The same as previous plant fibers, it won't overheat you. It's a fiber that will feel amazing to wear on hotter weather, but with yarns, you will usually encounter bamboo in blends with other fibers. Similarly as cotton and linen, bamboo is also prone to stretching a bit, so it won't keep the shape as well as wool would. But again, it's not like it will keep stretching endlessly. And I have knit a completely fitted cardigan with a cotton and bamboo blend, and it survived the wear marvelously. Normally, all of the plant fibers I've mentioned will also take to blocking really nicely. You can either use wet blocking methods or you can steam block them, but with steam blocking you have to be really careful, especially with cotton, because if you get it too hot or if you get the hot surface too close to the cotton, it can become shiny and look like old and worn out. Next fiber I want to talk about is actually an animal protein fiber, and it's silk. As far as fibers for hot weather, silk is actually quite controversial, and depending on whom you ask, people will either claim that it's the best summer fiber ever, or they will tell you that you should never, ever touch silk in summer and especially in hotter weather. And the truth is, both of those sides actually are correct. It just highly depends on how wet your climate is, and also what do you make out of the silk. Silk as a fiber is heavily insulating, and even though it's breathable, it will keep your temperature very nicely. So when it comes to hot weather, your best guess for silk is to make loose, flowy garments that will almost make like a tent around you and keep your temperature contained, and that will help you not overheat. But also if you live in climates that don't get as humid, that are a bit drier, then also a more fitted silk garment might be completely fine for you. Silk is made out of silkworm cocoon. It can either be made by boiling the cocoons and not letting them hatch, or these days we are also seeing more cruelty-free silk that's made from the cocoons after hatching. And also materials like burette silk uses a lot of leftover or waste silk. Silk will feel luxurious on your skin, it will feel silky, even the language is supporting the general feel of that fiber. But shininess and smoothness will usually be characteristic for the silk that's made with the traditional methods, so with boiling the cocoons. And meanwhile, burette silks or tussaud silks or any like leftover silks or cruelty silks will be a bit less shiny. They also might have a bit more vegetable matter in the yarn or in the fabric. I'll be honest, silk is one of those fibers where you have to try it for yourself and see if that works for you. Different bodies will react wildly differently to it, and as I said, it highly depends on what climate you live in, how prone you are to overheating, what's your lifestyle. So there isn't really a definitive advice that I can give you regarding silk and hotter weather. And speaking of climate, it might be that similarly as me, you are actually not living in a super hot or humid climate where all of the summers are like super hot, where you would always need cooling fibers. Sometimes in summers we need a bit warmer fibers, and for that I highly suggest using merino. It has all of the amazing wool qualities. It's breathable, it doesn't absorb smells that much, it has memory so it won't stretch out as much, but it usually feels nicer on the skin. And merino can be found in lots and lots of blends, so especially merino and cotton blends are really popular. So that is one of my favorite mixed fiber, cotton and merino, because it's still not overbearingly hot, but it also gives you some warmth and it combines the best qualities of both fibers. And because merino yarns usually aren't as rustic, they are usually also pleasanter to wear, and when it's warmer we don't really want to layer up as much, so our knits need to be able to be worn closer to the skin, and there merino just absolutely shines. I can't promise that everyone with sensitive skin will always have good time with merino. Again, sensitivities are very individual, but things like extra fine merino or superwash merino are a pretty safe choice to try out. Now for the things to avoid, it's definitely any synthetics. I am absolutely not synthetics hater. They have their amazing properties, they have their place in the fibers, and I don't think that they should be abolished. However, in hot weather, synthetics is your worst enemy. And if the weather is hot and humid, it's a complete killer. The problem with synthetics is that they are never breathable. They make you sweat, they make you overheat, they don't let your body naturally regulate the heat, and overall it's just a miserable experience. For any warmer weather garments, I will always and forever avoid any synthetic fibers, and there are basically no exceptions for that either. Regardless if I'm sewing or knitting or crocheting or whatever, synthetic fibers are just a complete no-go when it comes to warm weather. Another thing that I would personally avoid are any rustic animal protein yarns, so especially rustic wool yarns. Even though they are breathable and durable, they are not meant to be worn next to skin, and also they are meant to keep you warm. Of course, it again depends on what even is warmer weather for you personally, but generally speaking, rustic wools are not a thing that you want to reach for when the weather gets hot. One of the amazing things about fibers is that they can be mixed together or blended. And with those fiber blends, we get in one yarn or in one fabric all of the qualities from all of the fibers. Of course, that also means that the qualities will be mildly diluted, but sometimes that's a really good thing. For example, a cotton, linen and viscose blend is very popular in all sorts of yarns. And those yarns usually are very soft, very nice on the skin. They are quite nice to craft with, and they wear very well. Or as I already mentioned, cotton and merino blends are really popular. And those blends will be a bit warmer, they will have a bit more memory than cotton, but also they won't be as warm as merino. And that's an amazing combo for like summer nights or for transitional pieces between seasons. So basically when you get a fiber blend, you can fully expect it to have all of the properties from the fibers inside. They won't magically spawn like a completely different quality to them. If you know how the fibers in the blend behave, you already know pretty well how the blend will behave. Now for the different things that you need to pay attention to. When you have chosen the fiber that you want to work with, next most important bit is how thick the fabric is or what's the yarn weight. So the thicker fabric or heavier weight yarns will always make you warmer. The garments will be thicker, the garments will be a bit heavier, the garments will insulate heat a bit better. And so if you are looking for like a really lightweight garment for really hot weather, you should go with a thin fabric and with a very lightweight yarn. But if you live in a climate where it doesn't get as hot, then even thicker fabrics or heavier weight yarns will be completely appropriate. And then the next thing that you need to consider is the density of the fabric. Either the fabric that you have already bought or the fabric that you are creating by crafting. So the less dense fabric will always be more breathable, it will be more flowy, it will be less warm. And then again, denser fabrics will insulate you better and it will keep you warmer. Let me know in the comments if there's any specific summer yarns that you really love. I'm always on the lookout for new summer yarns to try out because I just personally have more use for plant-based yarns. And if you would like to support me making videos like these, I also have a Buy Me Coffee account where you can either become a subscriber or choose just a one-time payment. It's absolutely and totally on you. Regardless, my tutorials will always be for free. There is no extra content that's behind the paywall. The Buy Me Coffee account is literally just meant for people who want to support me, and I am deeply grateful for everyone who has signed up. Thank you, and I will see you in the next video.